Allora, good morning. Good morning. So tomorrow we have class 11 to 1. Okay? Tomorrow we have class 11 to 1. Then Monday we have class same time 9 to 11. Tuesday last class, which is not going to be a class, but is going to be a forum, a conference, a debate on democracy and power. So we're finalizing the program. Tomorrow we're going to see the program. The point of the conference is to get ideas on democracy from different perspectives, different countries. So the main actors in this conference are the students, so everybody is very welcome to talk about their country, their perspective. So, as you can see from the poster of the conference, the topic is democracy. Is democracy a universal or is just an illusion? Should democracy be exported all over the world, or should be political institutions adapted to the specific cases? So this is going to be Tuesday. Instead of last class, we do 4-hour conference. 4-hour conference, and in this 4-hour conference, we discuss some presentations that were supposed to be in the last class here is going to be in the conference. So, but we want to see contributions from all over the countries. We already have like 8, 9 students who are going to present about their countries. Other presentation, more than welcome. Yeah, even Daniel and Simona, they had to cancel their flight to Brussels to present about their country, unfortunately. So, yeah, you got refund or not? It's paid by taxpayers. So, where is the problem? So, if you change your mind, you're more than welcome to present. So, right now, we are in the part of the course which is the last part of the course, which is the 20th century and contemporary world. Right now, we're addressing the first part of the 20th century. So that's the first part of the 20th century. Let's say first part it ends somehow in 1945 when you have the end of World War II. So first part of the 20th century, as I said, is the bloodiest moment in human history. We have 2 world wars as a consequence of radical nationalism who did millions of death. You know, only in Russia, only Russians, 20 million people died in World War II to fight against the Nazis. But we don't know, not only have world wars, we also have totalitarianism, the Nazis regime, which was the project of exterminating an entire population of the Jews. Genocide. This means genocide, but it's different. It was not the first example in the history of genocide. But in this case, it was the scientific organization of exterminating a population through science and technology. It was a very scientific organization. It was the use of technology to do something, to build, ovens and extermination camps, to exterminate an entire population. This was the nature of this thing. At the same time, also the Western countries fighting the Nazis, they built up the atomic bomb to win the war. So they put all the scientific knowledge developed in centuries and centuries and centuries. The best scientists in the world. I don't know if you watched the movie Oppenheimer. the best scientists, they gather the best minds in the world, the best scientists in the world to build the atomic bomb. As you know, Einstein did not want to participate in this project because he didn't like the idea of building something that can kill the entire humanity. So at the end of this process, we arrived to a point in which we invented something that can exterminate the human species, that can exterminate the entire human species. So what we have tried to analyze is the relationship of this moment in history, the first half of the 20th century, with what we studied before, with what we studied in the third part, in the second and in the third part of the conference. So, as we say in the second part, we studied social contract theories to understand the birth of the modern state, the invention of the modern state. In the third, this was second part. Third part, we introduced enlightenment, these ideas that everybody must be understand through reason, through science, in order to develop progress of human societies, and that everything should be based on new political principles, which are individual rights, the rule of law, citizen rights, human rights, and all this popular sovereignty, and all these things. So we see that there is a contradiction, because Enlightenment brought us a new civilization, an entirely new civilization, also new societies that were industrial societies as a consequence of the Industrial Revolution. But what we see is that the outcome of this is war. Because the state becomes so perfect, but then nationalism took control of the state, and nationalists want to expand their power, want to dominate other population. Science becomes so perfect, but the ultimate use of science is building up the atomic bomb and using the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki to exterminate, entire population, killing innocent people, children, to completely destroy life of the people living in these two big cities in Japan. Technology, industrial technologies, the Industrial Revolution, new technologies, but then the ultimate and perfect use of this technology was, the building of extermination camps in which you technologically organized perfect machine to kill people. So this was the kind of contradiction that our good friend Nietzsche understood that were coming to arrive. This kind of contradiction. Then yesterday we addressed Max Weber. Max Weber, what do you have to remind about Max Weber for the final exam? Max Weber. First concept. It takes the same principle like Nietzsche, disenchantment of the world. So before Enlightenment, before modernity, the world was enchanted in the sense that you believe that reality comes from something metaphysical. The meaning of reality comes from outside, comes from gods, comes from superstitions, comes from tradition, comes from magic and irrational forces, comes from mysticism, and all these things. Whilst so the world was enchanted. You looked at the world like if it was something magic, something who has a meaning beyond this pure manifestation. Enlightenment is the rationalization. So it sees modernity as a process of rationalization. And to describe this process, he studies the two biggest things we have in political modernity, two most important things. The state as a political institution and capitalism as a social organization, as a way to organize society based on trade, commerce, production, private property, and so on. So he studied these two things, and he says, what is the effect of this rationalization? So even though it is very different from Nietzsche, it has some kind of points in common, like the idea that the outcome of rationalization is the iron cage. The iron cage of rationalization. This means that, we build this beautiful machine of the state to protect and to control people, and we build this administration, bureaucracy, and so on. But then bureaucracy becomes a nightmare because you need constantly to do bureaucratic process which are not understandable anymore. We're going to see right now. Let's see. So let's start with the state. What about the state? The state, Max Weber said, we have seen yesterday, the state, to understand the state, we can start from the three types of power. He said you have three types of power: traditional, charismatic, and rational. So in pre-modern society, in antiquity, in the Middle Ages, traditional power dominated. What is traditional power? The power whose legitimacy comes from tradition, kingship, monarchy, aristocracy, Catholic Church, religion. How does it come from? From the tradition. The tradition who entitles you, based on the tradition, since you are the son of the king, you're going to be king, and your son is going to be king again. Aristocracy, same thing, you have blood. You have noble blood, so you are an aristocrat, your son is going to be an aristocrat, and so on. Traditional legitimacy, monarchies, and so on. Then we have a second kind of power, which is charismatic power. Charismatic power is, when you have a leader, because this leader has his own features that makes him a leader. He's very strong. He's a leader. So you have this also in ancient society, when, for example, you have the leaders of the armies who become also the leader of the states, the leader of the republic. Like, for example, you have the case of Napoleon, you have the great goal. You have the case of Julius Caesar in ancient Rome, who were in a republic, but he wanted to go to empire because he was so charismatic. So you have charismatic, you have traditional, but what is the modern state is based on a third type of power, which is rational power, bureaucratic power. So, where is your legitimacy is not the tradition, is not your charisma, it's a set of rational rules which are written in the Constitution. So there is no tradition, but there is a set of rules, and this set of rules makes you the leader. Like the President of the Republic of Italy is not the President of the Republic of Italy because his father was the President. He's not the President because he is very charismatic. He's the President because, according to the Constitution, the two chambers of the Parliament gathered together and discussed, and they got, and they voted for one person which must have, a certain year of this, which must be above 50 years, and so on and so forth, and so he got elected according to these rules. It doesn't have to. Indeed, if you see presidents of the Italian Republic, it's not that they're not charismatic, they're just boring. It's supposed to be even boring, because he's the person who controls the Constitution, who controls that the government respect the Constitution. So no charisma, just very rational, very according to the laws. So this is one case, and all the state is organized according to this thing. Even as I said yesterday, even the professor at the university who works for the state is not because it's good, it's not because it's good looking, it's not because he's smart, it's because he went to a public call, he answered a public call, he went to a public call, he submitted his publication, his curriculum vitae, and then you have a jury of people who say, yeah, these are the points, and then we give you this point for this, and everything is super rational. So you have rationality everywhere. You see, if you match this criteria, then you can do this. If you don't match this criteria, then you cannot do this, and blah 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 blah. And this is, you know, the state. But this becomes an iron cage. You become, you know, this rationalization, which is beautiful, which is done to, you know, grant rights to everybody and so on, becomes an iron cage. Like, as I say, when you go to the public administration, sometimes even at the university, you say, yeah, I need this title, I need to convalidate this title from the thing, and you have the woman who say, yes, so for this, you have to go to the other office from my colleague. Then you spend the day after, you take an appointment to the colleague, blah, blah, blah. You go there, you wait 1 hour in line, and you say, okay, this is the thing. And she said, no, this is not me, you have to go back to the colleague. But the colleague told me to the, but yeah, you know, it said everything becomes so difficult. Or if you want to do citizenship, you're doing citizenship, Daria, no?
Yes, I did.
How's that going?
It was a mess. It took 4 months, not that long, but it was very bureaucratic, I would say.
Yeah.
And you have to speak to a lot of people.
You have to speak to a lot of people, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, like for example, when I was in France, when I lived in France, for example, I need to do residency in Paris. Okay, so yeah, I went to the public office, 1 hour in line, and then I said, okay, I have to make residency. They told me, yeah, to make residency, the rule is that you need to have a bank account in France. So, okay. So I take another appointment, okay, can I come tomorrow? No, tomorrow is full, tomorrow after tomorrow, one week after I had to go there. Meanwhile, I go to the bank and they say, hello, I need to open a bank account. And the guy say, yeah, right, but to open a bank account you need residency. And you say, what? And you cannot even, you know, because you say, this is the rule. I mean, it's rational power. It's rational power. Acknowledged by this, so you cannot even punch in the face this guy because it's useless, you know. In ancient time, you know, charismatic power is tapping and you take the thing. Right now, rational legitimacy you cannot do like this. So it's an iron cage. You got trapped in the nightmare of bureaucracy because this rationalization becomes a power that is bigger than you, and you cannot control anymore. You know, it's like I don't know if you read Kafka. Kafka, the trial, the processo. So he got lost in this situation in which he's under trial, but he cannot find the judge, he cannot find the rule, he cannot understand nothing. So he's completely out of your control, and you become enslaved in this iron cage of modern rationalization. So this is the state. But what Weber told us is, yeah, let's look what makes a state a state. Let's look, yeah, this rationalization is crucial. What makes a state a real state? Let's see the definition of the state. I mean, too many slides, but somewhere we can find. So, okay, let's say, forget about the slide. So, a state is a political enterprise or manage to get the monopoly of legitimate violence. So, the point is that, like Nietzsche, you remember that Nietzsche introduced the genealogical method. So also Weber uses a genealogical method. You say, let's go to see how the state was born. And you say, yeah, you have this beautiful idea of the social contract between the people and the sovereign, the establishment of sovereignty, beautiful ideas, but let's look how it works. It works that when a group of people manage to build up a force of coercion, which is above all any other force of coercion, and to make their law respected, their rules respected through this force of coercion, you have a state. A state is a state when it has the physical strength to make the rule respected. This means when you have the monopoly of violence. The state, the contemporary state, for example, the Republic of Italy, in the territory of Italy has the monopoly of violence in the sense that if you break a law, you can reasonably expect that body, an organized force, which is called the police, come and takes you and makes you respect the rules. And if they do not respect the rules, they kidnap you and they put you in a room which is closed. And usually this would be called kidnapping, but in the state, for the state is legitimate. So they put you in jail, and everybody considers that this form of violence is legitimate because it's the state who exercise this form of violence. So it's always the ability to have this monopoly of violence. The revolution, for example, is a moment, the revolution of the Civil War is a moment in which you have the monopoly of violence of the state, which is challenged by another people who is able to set an army who can challenge and overcome the power of the state. So this is why, organized crime is always not only a problem, a social problem, but is also a political problem, because when you have an organized force who is able over a territory to exercise monopoly of violence, to make the rule respected through the use of force, they compete with the state, they challenge the state. So you say, yeah, rationalization and so on, but at the end what you see is that the origin of the state is in the exercise of violence. Is in the exercise of violence. It's not in the abstract ideas of sovereignty and individual rights, but is in this thing. The other huge force that he sees is capitalism. Capitalism is also rationalization. It's the fact that you rationalize the organization of labor in society, you produce the division of labor in society, you apply science and technique to produce goods. So this is also a rationalization, and this also produces the iron cage. The iron cage, even in industrial society, you were supposed to do the same work for your entire life, 5 days per week, 8 hours per day, real iron cage, because you have to earn your living, and then you have to put your contribution to go to pension, and to live the last years of your life in peace, and so on. So also capitalism is an iron cage. But Max Weber, on this ground, he challenges the view of Marx. Marx said, yeah, capitalism is the result of the struggle between classes, and historical development of material relationship between forces of production. Max Weber said, no, I'm going to try to offer a different genealogy of capitalism. He goes and he says, he makes a historical analysis and he says, we can say that capitalism was first developed and grew up in these Nordic countries, like in the Netherlands, like one part of Germany, where after Protestant Reformation, and you see that there was the point in which they started to produce gold in order to produce accumulation, which is the principle of capitalism. How did this came up? And they say, I'm going to give a different explanation. I'm going to say that capitalism has a spirit, and this spirit is the fact that you don't produce goods just to enjoy the fruits of this good, of this profit, but to accumulate more, and they find it a reason in the doctrine of the predestination of the Protestant Reform, and in particular of the Calvinist sects. Okay, who say, what did he say, this religion? This religion said, you were born saved or damned. When you're born, you're ready, that you have a destiny to go to hell or to go to heaven, to make it simple. But this, you cannot know, but you can see signs. Signs are like the fact that you work, you have success in work, you have money, you get money, so this is a sign of success. So these Calvinists wanted to, work a lot because this is a sign that you have a destiny, that you have salvation, But you work not to enjoy the fruits of your work, but to produce more and produce more and produce more. So this is the spirit of capitalism and defined in the Protestant ethic of work. So Max Weber, you must remember, the state, monopoly of violence, and capitalism as a origin in Protestant reform, as a spirit of capitalism, as a spirit. So, right now we're going to discuss the next one. Daira.
Lucia. Bueno.
Daira, Lucia.
Nadra fino quieto.
Dara, Lucia, Nadra, fino quieto.
Bueno.
Dara, Lucia, Nadra, fino quieto.
I'm taking this.
Ahora eres ciudadana de Italia,
Claro.
compatriota. So this is the conference. Guys, you have these lights. Grazie Erika. She's gonna make a dance show. Cosa parli?
Un po' di tutto.
Come latino siamo salsa.
C'è salsa, c'è
Tango poi.
tango, c'è salsa, bachata, tango, reggaeton, tutto quello che ti fa quello divertente.
Anche reggaeton.
Anche reggaeton, certo.
So, Carl Schmitt. Carl Schmitt, as we said yesterday, wanted to find what is the real principle of politics. What is the real principle of politics? So, what is the question that Carl Schmitt says? It's, okay, so if we know that, for example, aesthetic is about what is good looking and what is ugly. If his ethics and morality is about the good and the bad, okay, let's go with it.
I haven't seen the video. I don't know
Who is this?
Fammi che si chiama. Ok.
We don't have it on the slide.
Very old. I prefer Tupac.
Ciao. Buongiorno, hola. Okay, so Carl Schmitt. He was not a good guy, you know. So the contents of this presentation. We're going to start with a brief introduction. Then I'm going to speak about the book, one of his books, that is called The Concept that it is called political theology. Then we want to talk about the political thinking and criteria of the author. Then he was a Nazi, so I'm going to talk about that too. Relevant quotes from the concept of the political, and then I'm going to explain why I chose this song to represent it. His statement. So, Carl Schmitt, he was a German philosopher who played a key role in the 20th century political and legal period. His work was characterized by a critical approach to modern liberal and democratic ideas, as well as his reflection on sovereignty, the relationship between law and politics, and the nature of the state. He was skeptical of the universality of liberalism and parliamentarism, and his writing often ought to question traditional notions of political order and authority. Concept of the political. In his book, it is argued that politics cannot be reduced to a field of technical or moral action, but rather has an essentially conflicting character. The central distinction in his work is the one that separates friends from enemies. For Schmitt, politics is defined by a group's ability to identify itself against a common enemy. The enemy is not necessarily a moral or personal enemy, but simply someone who is perceived as a threat to the existence of the group. The idea of war or conflict as a fundamental component of politics was one of the most controversial features of his thought. Okay, political thinking of the author. Schmitt primarily focuses on the concept of sovereignty, political decision, and the distinction between friend and enemy. For him, the political is essentially a struggle over the distinction between who is a friend and who is an enemy. In his view, the state and politics are a matter of struggle and conflict, not of consensus or collaboration. His concept of sovereignty is closely linked to the ability to make exceptional decisions. According to him, the sovereign is the one who has the power to decide in situations of exception. When legal norms no longer apply or are insufficient, just a minute. Okay. When legal norms no longer apply or are insufficient to face a crisis, only the sovereign is the one who can decide on the state of exception, meaning they can suspend the law when necessary for the survival of the state. Okay, influence and controversies. Although Schmitt has a profound influence on political theory, his relationship with the Nazi regime, he was a member of the Nazi Party between 1933 and 1936, has been one of the main sources of controversy. In spite of the fact that he distanced himself from Hitler and the Nazi regime, his thought became associated with the theoretical justification of authoritarianism. His work nowadays is debated on the academia. We're doing right now. Okay, some relevant quotes from the concept of the political. We have: the enemy is the one who, if necessary, can be eliminated by the use of force. Politics, in its purest form, has nothing to do with ethics or morality. The political is characterized by the distinction between on the state of exception from political theory. And then I choose the rap song because it addresses the struggle against the established power, oppression, and the identification of a clear enemy, although it is a more social, less theoretical approach than Schmidt's. The song captures the idea of the distinction between a friend and an enemy, and the call to action against a system perceived as oppressive. In this sense, it could be associated with Schmidt's view of politics as an existential confrontation that cannot be denuded by liberal norms or attempts at consensus.
Public enemy, because public enemy is indeed the central concept in Carl Schmitt's thinking. The central concept in Carl Schmitt thinking. So Carl Schmitt, let's say Carl Schmitt is a lawyer, a jurist, but also a political theorist. Okay, let's start to understand, let's recap him. So when you come to the exam and I ask Carl Schmitt, you have to say this point. So first, Carl Schmitt say, when we speak about politics, right nowadays we speak about the states, individual rights, political parties, constitution and so on. He says, yeah, but what is for real politics? It's not only the state. What is the principle of politics beyond the state? What is the principle of politics in general? Beyond political parties, you know? So what is, when you study politics, what do you study? It says when you study, for example, when you study economics, you study, profitable versus non-profitable, what is producing value and what is useless economy. So you have this opposition. When you study law, you study what is right and what is wrong, or what is allowed and what is not allowed. When you study aesthetics, you study beautiful versus ugly, morals, good and bad, good and evil. What is the origin of politics? And to say the real origin of politics, he makes this concept, the political. Not politics, because you say politics, you think that you have to talk about state political parties and so on. But the origin of politics, what is the origin of politics? What is the couple that signed politics? Politics is based on the couple, friend versus enemy. You have politics when you are able to divide the situation into two opposite fields. Two different fields. This is when you have politics. And two different fields, and in these two different fields, a group acknowledge each other as friends, and the other group as enemy. This is what does it mean an enemy? That is, is not a personal enemy. It's a public enemy. Public enemy is a public enemy. Is a public enemy. Is not somebody. It's like two soldiers that they face each other in the battle. They have nothing against each other. It's say maybe he's a good guy. Maybe if we meet at the pub, we can be friends. We can go there. We can go clubbing together. We could be friends. And blah blah blah, and having a lot of fun together. But right now we're soldiers. So formally we're enemies. We have to kill each other. This is public enemy. It's nothing personal. It's not moral judgment. It's not aesthetic judgment. It's not, it's just politics divided us in these two fields. So it says the origin of politics the origin of politics is in a conflict. The matrix of politics is a war, is a contraposition between two parts. So in the 18th century, we had this famous general Clausewitz who said, war is the continuation of politics with different means. But for Schmitt, politics is the continuation of war with different means. So politics starts with a situation in which you have war, in which you have a contraposition, in which two parties struggle, in which there is this conflict. And then this conflict you can make institutions and you can make laws in order to continue to do this exercise of politics, which is in a conflict, but within a system of laws. Even the word party comes from parts. You have different parts. You have politics only when you have different parts confronting each other. The origin is a conflict, is a struggle. If you think always, the origin of a constitution is almost always a war, a civil war, a conflict, like the Italian constitution. At the end of the Italian constitution, you had an article that says where is the enemy, because the Italian constitution says, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but last article is not allowed the reconstitution of the fascist party, because the enemy was the fascist, and the constitution grew up through fighting, the fascists, and winning the fascists. So it was in a civil war of all those who decided to rebel against fascism. You look at Vietnam, you have the origin of your constitution is the independence, the struggle for independence. So the enemy, the public enemy, was the colonizer. So every constitution has its origin in this, in this war, in this conflict. Yeah, and then politics continue to be based on a conflict. So why he became Nazi? Because he didn't like liberalism. He didn't like the liberals who wanted to deny that there is always this conflict. So it's neutralization. For his, liberals say, yeah, but okay, we all agree on the terms of political rights, so we have just to do, constitutionalism, division of power, and you have to develop the legislation in order to make it good. We have to do constitutionalization, we have to do international courts of justice, and you have to make the rule of law and go in this direction. And they say, no, there is always a conflict. And a state of exception and crisis, and the moment and the real nature, the real origin of politics is in this crisis. Liberalism wants to neutralize this thing, want to eliminate crisis as the crucial part of politics, want to pretend that war and conflict is not the crucial part of politics. So, when there was the Nazis, he liked this new strong politics. So we have seen right now Weber, Schmitt. We see that these guys are profoundly realist. They belong to the tradition of political realism. Political realism, we have Machiavelli. Machiavelli is, important political realist, and started to say, yeah, because also Machiavelli had the same kind of problems. Machiavelli wanted to say, what are the specific laws of politics? He wanted to divide morals from politics. He said, yeah, moral is good, you understand what is good and what is bad in general, but politics has different laws, which is the law of the state, the interest of the state, and to do the interest of the state, sometimes you have to do bad things. So he also wrote a book about the art of war. Also Machiavelli saw that politics has an origin in war. Thomas Hobbes said, you know, the origin of the state is the problem of violence. You have violence in the state of nature, so you have to build up a sovereign power who can eliminate violence from society by monopolizing, by taking all the power of coercion in itself. Realist, Machiavelli, Thomas Hobbes, realist. Weber, same thing. He says, yeah, you have all this rationalization thing, but at the end, the origin of the state is the moment in which you constitute the monopoly of violence. Same thing is Carl Schmitt. The origin of politics is the couple friend of enemy, is a conflict. You have politics when you have two different positions, these different positions are confronting each other. You have politics only when you have this division between friends and enemies. And, you know, in this division, there is also, you must always think, imagine, consider the possibility of getting a moment in which you kill each other in a civil war or in a confrontation. Politics is when you have two different positions and people, you know, are ready to fight for these different positions. So this is political realism. It's not the world as it ought to be, but is how it is, and it is based on this kind, you know, of forces, which are also bad forces, but politics is about also these bad forces. So, Carl Schmitt, when Hitler took the power, he saw that he was kind of embodying this idea of politics as, you know, based on conflict, based on the fact that you produce a crisis, a state of exception, and you make a decision in the state of exception, and so on and so forth. So right now we're entering a problematical moment in the 20th century, which is fascism and Nazism. We have a presentation on fascism, and then after the presentation of fascism, we're gonna talk about Nazism through the thought of Hannah Arendt. Yes.
Where can I do mine?
What can you do?
My presentation.
Your presentation. Yeah. What can you do? Your presentation?
When can?
First you have to upload to Microsoft Teams.
I did it.
Okay. Then you want to present it in the class? Yes. Let me think. You can do it tomorrow, I think. Go on. First I'm gonna think about where it is. So, what's your name? Lia. Alia. Dove abbiamo messo la presentazione? Here. Alia Papova.
Hello everybody, my name is Alia and today I will talk about fascism and its prominent figure Benito Mussolini, who once said, all within the state, nothing outside the state and nothing against the state, which is the core idea of fascism, because it says that state defines and controls all people's lives. Mostly I will talk about how this ideology emerged and policies of Benito Mussolini and its impact on 20th century, so how it changed the course of the 20th century. And what is exactly about fascism? Fascism is a political movement that rose in the early 20th century. It believes in strong natural rights and state power, also obedience to one leader. It stands against democracy and limits personal freedom in favor of unity and control. It opposes liberal democracy, and there is a situation. Imagine a country in crisis, full of problems, and now imagine a man who promises order, pride, and glory. This was Italy in 1922, and the man was Benito Mussolini. Background of Mussolini: He was born in 1883. He started his political life as a socialist and journalist, but after supporting World War I, he was expelled from Socialist Party. Yeah. After World War I, Italy was in a serious trouble. There was huge unemployment, social unrest, and economic crisis. Democracy seemed weak, and Italians were desperate for stability. After that, there was a chaos, and people feared of a communist revolution, like it was in Russia. So Benito Mussolini came and used this situation to gain power. And in 1919, he founded a fascist movement, created the name Fasci di Combattimento. It's a nationalist movement made up of war veterans and street gangs, known black shorts. They were their supporters. And in 1922, there was March on Rome. It was organized by his supporters, and it was showing efforts to pressure the government. But even though it wasn't a real war, not a military coup, but it created a fear of civil war. So after that, the King Victor Emmanuel III, he refused to stop Mussolini and just invited him to form a government. And after this, he became prime minister, literally became prime minister without using guns or hiring a gun. And from prime minister to dictator, he gradually eliminated political opposition. So he didn't become dictator just immediately. He did it step by step. At first, he was using democratic system, but behind it, he was breaking it down. How he did it? He passed laws that gave him more power against his political enemies, and his supporters, the black shorts, threatened and attacked the people who disagreed with Mussolini, and usually got with it. Mussolini also took over the media, newspapers, radio, and even school books. For him, it was everything should have fascist ideas. Also, we had a situation in 1924. There was a socialist who criticized Mussolini for his ideas and found murdered. But whole country was shocked, but Mussolini managed to stay in power and use this crisis to gain even more control. And about propaganda, everything was from fascist ideas, and one party stayed by 1925. By 1925, he wants all other political parties, and from that time, Italy became one-party dictatorship. After that, Mussolini called himself a teacher, which means the leader. After this, and after that, a fascist regime fully established. Fascism through Mussolini's prism. For him, fascism wasn't just a way of governing. It was both action and thought. Imagine being punished not about what to act, the way of thinking. Everything, people should think that state is everything. From art to science, everything should serve to the advantage of the state. Also, life was not about personal happiness for Mussolini. It was about sacrifice and duty. State is above the individual, so it means that your personal dreams and family is the second, came second, and at the first, states defined what's your role in in your life. And to him, the state was just like a soul and the very identity of the people. In foreign affairs, Mussolini dreams to recreate the Roman Empire, so that's why he invaded the Ethiopia in 1935, which had like, a big consent by international community. After that, he had alliance with Nazi Germany, and Italy joined the Axis powers during World War III, or second, sorry. And the fall of Mussolini. Mussolini's ambitions brought Italy into World War II, which had huge losses, and with big consequences. He lost the support of his people because at the first time people trusted him because he said that I will give you pride and so on, and now he lost it, and in 1943 Mussolini was removed from power and arrested. Later, Nazis helped him to have a puppet regime in northern Italy, but it didn't last. And in 1945, he was captured by Italian partisans and executed. And impact, fascism didn't just change Italy; it changed the whole course of 20th century because the regime of Mussolini inspired Hitler and Nazi movements in Germany. So it's led to the World War II, and it was the deadliest conflict in history, and it was also inspired the Holocaust, and it shaped global reaction. After that, people started to learn about liberal democracy and human rights deeply, and fascism became a warning sign in political theory. So it became a study in totalitarianism where the state dominates every part of life. And even today, there are some far-right movements which has fascist ideas, strong nationalism, and authoritarian leadership. That's why it's important to study about fascism and Mussolini, because it gives us the signs of political danger, and after that, it shows us how democracy changed to the dictatorship, and it gives us the signs that the human rights really matter. And also at that time, where propaganda, the freedom of speech was no longer allowed. Yeah. So these are the resources, and thank you for listening.
So thank you very much. Thank you. We had two great presentations today about Carl Schmitt and fascism. Very good. I'm very happy. And yeah, so as you can understand, so fascism, let's say, and this. So fascism, the basic point of fascism, as she said, is, it's based on the idea of the nation. Like Hitler, what did he do? National socialism. Originally was the party of the National Socialism. So they from socialists, they took this idea that the power should control the economy somehow. but they put it national. They refined it on the idea of nation. What is the main principle of the thing? That you have the nation, which is a metaphysical body. You have the nation, which is a unity of blood of the population. It's kind of ethnic, racial concept. And then you see that the leader, the political party, should be the representation of the will of the nation. You know, it reminds somehow Rousseau idea of volonté générale, the will, general will. But he says, within the blood of the nation there is a soul, and this soul is expressing something, and the leader must be the embodiment of the soul of the nation, of what the nation wants. So, and everybody who is the enemy of the nation should not be allowed to talk, should not have right, because we have to, make the nation grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. So, it's, and as we see Carl Schmitt, this is against the neutralization of liberalism. Liberalism wants to make rules, want to make rights, and so on, but we want nations. So, this was a kind of situation, it was 100 years ago, but as you can see, we are right now facing a similar situation nowadays, because we have strong nationalisms all over the world. Why? Because we had globalization for a long time. Globalization, liberal institutions, you have the WTO, World Trade Organization, we have the International Courts of Justice, the United Nations, the G20, the G8, all these international organizations wanted to rule the world according to liberal and neoliberal principles and so on. But what happened is that, this globalization, the lower classes in Western society, they got more poorer because with migration, global migration, with globalization, you had a real redistribution all over the world, you have new countries coming up. So you had this growth of nationalists who said, no, let's get back to the nations, let's get back to the states. Against globalization, we want nations. Again, we don't like globalization, we want nations. We're tired of this principle of liberalism, we want nations. So, what does it say? Donald J. Trump. America first means make America great again. This means against globalization, we want to get back to the nation of America. The nation of America, which actually was the indigenous that they killed and genocide all of them, but they think they're a nation, so let's make it great again, so let's put tariff on global commerce to protect our national industries, and so on and so forth. Vladimir Putin, nationalist. He say, the interest of Russia must be protected at any cost. Even if we have to go to nuclear war, we have to go to nuclear war. But these guys want to put NATO at my border. This is against the interest of my nation. I don't care, because the nation is more important, so I invade Ukraine. Also, nationalism in Ukraine is growing and growing and growing and growing a lot. In Italy, theoretically the constitution is against fascism, but we have a post-fascist party ruling. So, the problem with nationalism, what is the problem with nationalism and with fascism? Is that you say, I am, the first thing is to have the interest of my nation. But the interest of your nation is naturally in somehow conflict with the interest of the other nations, because all nations, in their interest, the interest of a nation is to get more power, more influence, to become more dominant in commerce, in politics. So it's clear that you start having conflicts. And indeed, the problem we have nowadays is that, a situation of global conflict, which is very scary, is growing up and up and up and up, and the problem is that many countries right now have the atomic bomb, and this is not very comfortable. Right now in Ukraine they're fighting around Zaporizhia, central thing. So if a missile goes to this thing, we're all fucked up, basically. So it's not, and for me, it's not that good national. I understand the point, but it's very dangerous ideology. So, who make the most advanced analysis of these kind of things? A female philosopher. Finally, we have a female philosopher. This is very important, which is Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt. She makes the concept of totalitarianism because she made a very, very, very in-depth analysis of fascism, but also of Stalin, communism in USSR, and overall a very, 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 very in-depth analysis of Nazism. Why? Because she was living she was a Jew, a Jewish student in Nazi Germany. So she had to leave, she had to escape to avoid concentration camps. She had to escape. She was a very good student of philosophy in a very important university of Heidelberg. And, there she was very promising, but then she had to leave. She had to escape to France, and then she had to escape to the United States to avoid concentration camp. So she was very, very, very interested in understanding Nazism. Okay? And also she was very promising student in Heidelberg. She was his professor was one of the most important philosophers in the 20th century, Martin Heidegger. We don't study him because he didn't make political philosophy. He was was an existentialist, so he was thinking about design, the being, what does it mean being, what does it mean as existence, and so on. He didn't write much about philosophy, basically about politics. He didn't understand, he didn't get anything about politics. It was about politics, it was really wrong. Indeed, he went to the Nazi party. But the problem is that Hannah Arendt was her student, and also they fell in love to each other, So she was so much in love with the professor, and the professor taught her a lot of, categories to understand philosophy. So she was a Heideggerian philosopher because the guy was very good in philosophy. So she taught a lot, she learned a lot, but then he got Nazist. Then she had to escape the thing. So this remained because for her entire life she tried to develop a philosophy against Nazism, but her foundational education was with this professor and teacher, and also, they were very much in love, but obviously she broke up because she couldn't accept the situation. So she wrote the book, The Origin of Totalitarianism, which is the most important book on the concept of totalitarianism. So what we're interested is totalitarianism, and also we're going to see something about Eichmann in Jerusalem. So she had to escape, and she had to go. She lived the rest of her life in New York City as a professor at New York University, and this is the thing. So let's try to understand what she says about totalitarianism. So she saw the political crisis of political modernity that we have seen with Nietzsche, with Weber, with Schmidt, and she said, the point of the rise of totalitarianism is a response to this crisis. What is totalitarianism? What is totalitarianism? So at the origin of totalitarianism, you always have a kind of racist attitude. This means that you always have this feeling of the nation as a block that you have to preserve. And so you build an enemy with other ethnic group. We know that the strong of Adolf Hitler is to build this public enemy, which was not a public enemy in the sense of Schmidt, because it was a biological enemy. It was a racial enemy. For him, the Jewish where for Adolf Hitler the Jewish, were a threat, biological threat, racial threat, ethnic threat for the nation. So racism is very, 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 very important. And the rise of imperialism, in the sense that state nations want to expand their influence. So, as you see, imperialism created the conditions for mass migration and displaced population, which brought about the growth of anti-Semitism, racism. You see that it's something that we can recognize even nowadays, because in the contemporary crisis, in the contemporary surge of nationalism, the migration crisis is also crucial. Because you have mass migration due to globalization, due to climate change, due to wars, due to economic conditions. So she said at the time she saw, what was important is mass migration to foster racism, and also to foster, in particular in this case, an anti-Semitism. You have Jewish population migrating and so on. So what she saw is how Nazism, the totalitarian ideology of Nazism, managed to turn anti-Semitism into a political ideology that scapegoated Jews for economic and social problems and provide a unifying force for fascist movement. So here, what Schmidt says, about friend and enemy, they really apply it very much, because they created the enemy of the Jewish. They start to say, yeah, we have a public enemy, which is also a biological enemy. This enemy, is this population which we have inside our nation, which threatens our nation, because they have the money, they control the bank system, they're corrupting our society, they're taking all the power, they do conspiracies. So they created this enemy, and they were able to make anti-Semitism into a general political ideology, yes.
I forgot there was a term that Hitler tried to preserve that belonging to our people.
Aryan. Yeah, Aryans. Exactly. So, yeah, good point, Sabrina. Because they made the Aryans is the friend, is the field of the friends. So Hitler, what they did? He managed to create the enemy. The enemy is the Jewish, is the Semitic population migrating, and at the end he also, developed this concept of the Aryans to describe the Germans, but not only the Germans who were within Germany, but some Germans which are some population outside the borders of Germany. So he was entitled to expand. He needed. He was, he had a duty to expand the nation of Germany to other Germanic population, which were Aryans. So the field of the friends and the field of the enemies. The field of the friends and the field of the enemies. You see, even nowadays, Carl Schmitt, how is important, Carl Schmitt, to understand politics? You see that, you had parties in the last 20 years, in the last 10 years, 15 years after migration crisis, who just was born, and they got so much power. Why? Because they were very good in saying, migrants are our enemies. They took our jobs, they sell drugs, they put crimes here, and blah, 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 blah. And when you have the capacity to bring a strong enemy, you get, so much political power. Indeed, they got a lot of votes in the election. What really changed the elections in Europe in the last 20 years was, this, friend and enemy who were against the migrants got a lot of votes, because there was a very strong ability to build migrants as enemies. So, we have this Nazi Germany. Who did in this way. So she analyzed it also in the Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union, at the beginning, you have this kulaki, the peasants, the rich peasant. Bach, what do you know about kulaki? Bach, kulaki.
They were kind of like the middle class peasants or something like that. They were like landlords back in Vietnam. So basically that.
In Vietnam?
Yeah, we also have like landlords, like small landlord big landlord because we have a feudal system back then.
Yeah,
So the kulaks, they feel like the translation of the kulak is like these small landlords, but that they still have land, like they still have people working on it. But like they are big landlords, like they control entire villages and they are like huge barons of their own. So it's not the same, but I guess it's the closest translation that we got.
yeah, yeah. So in the Soviet Union, yeah, we had the same with these kulaks. So, so let's see. So you have this, racism is crucial to build totalitarianism. Racism in the sense that you produce an enemy, that you produce as an enemy in the sense of Karga, Schmidt. You produce an enemy. Then what you have? Second point, you have a mass. You have a mass. So, yeah, you don't have classes. You don't have different classes who have their own interest and blah, 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 blah. For totalitarianism, the nation is a class-less society. It's a body of individuals that, all together forms the nation. So, it's based on mass society. It's a mass in which, the nation is not, it's just a collection of individuals who forms the nation. So you have, you have this mass. You have a mass. You don't have classes. You don't have a society. You have a mass which forms the nation. So this is why, for example, as I said, Nietzsche could never be a Nazi because he was an individualist. He said every individual has to do his own power, must become the god of himself, and must rebuild his own values and to build his own political, his own views, by himself. But Nazism is mass, is based on the mass. It's a mass ideology. You have this society which, is atomized, is fragmented. You have the individual, you have the leader, and you have the nation. Nothing else. You don't have classes, you don't have groups, and so on and so forth. So, and then you have the totalitarian movement, which is this mass movement that seeks to mobilize the entire population in support of the new ideology. Totalitarian movement is characterized by this use of propaganda, the creation of the new language, the Aryans, the Celtica, Croce Celtica. How do you say Croce Celtica in English? Simona, how do you say Croce Celtica? Celtic, the Nazis. What? Swastika, yeah. You put the swastika, and so you want to build a new form of authority. So you have propaganda, you have this, so you have mass, you have a mass. Then you have a leader, and this leader is, as she said when explaining Mussolini, the leader is supposed to be, the one who interprets, embodies the soul of the nation, that speaks for the nation. So you have a mass, you have a leader who speaks for this mass, you have a new ideology, and you have terror. Because then you keep power through fear, because the nation, the fact that you speak for the nation entitles you to use any means to protect the nation. So you can use terror, you can use, limitation on free speaking, and so on. So it's a form of domination. And so the concentration camp for her was, the quintessential form of totalitarianism. It's a situation in which, you have just the existence of the bare life of the people in the concentration camp, and you have the power to do whatever they want with the life, with the body, with the existence of all these people. It's the subordination of all interest to the ideology of the regime, So, let's quote Hannah Arendt. Without concentration camps, without the undefined fear they inspired, and the very well-defined training they offer, in totalitarian domination, a totalitarian state can neither inspire its nuclear troops, with fanaticism, not maintain a whole people incomplete apathy. So yeah, it was, you know, it was an instrument, it was a representation of the totalitarian ideology. So yeah, it's a new form of government that seeks to control, totalitarianism seeks to control all aspects of life. So yeah, totalitarian wanted to rebuild, you know, art, wanted to rebuild architecture. You know, this is clear, for example, in Soviet Union, you know, we have Russian students now. So yeah, like you have 2 Russian students, 3, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, so like for example, let's say architecture, brutalist architecture, you know? Yeah, it's the Soviet architecture. They wanted to build a new form of architecture which was expressing, you know, the idea of equality, the idea of socialist equality within this very realist form of architecture. Also, you know, this was very powerful in the USSR, in my view, because they really wanted to promote a new form of art which was beyond the old expression of bourgeois art. So it's a new form of government that seeks to control all aspects of life, you know? So he wants to destroy the past and create a new world. And so, and for doing this, he uses terror, propaganda, the destruction of civil society, and the substitution of civil society with a mass society, which you have atomized individual, the destruction of the rules of law, and the concentration camp as the epitome of totalitarianism. So, yeah, Hitler, Mussolini, they wanted, you know, to concentrate all the power in the state authority. So, let's recap. What did she say? She said totalitarianism is a modern phenomenon. It's not like despotism. It's not what they study Aristotle, Plato, they study despotism. No, this is a new thing. Because to do totalitarianism, you need a modern society which can be a mass society and in which you can use the new instruments for propaganda and in which you can use technology for the purpose of politics. And it emerged, as we see, as the crisis of traditional political institutions. So it's a response to the crisis of the values of the Enlightenment, of the liberal values of individual rights, and so on and so forth. It's, you know, a response to the crisis that we have described through Nietzsche, through Weber. So it represents a radical break with the past. So this is the thing, and the point is, you know, the point is also to understand, yeah, it's totalitarianism in conflict, in contrast with the value of enlightenment, is, you know, the outcome of the value of enlightenment. Is that if you build the state in its maximum perfect form, you get a totalitarian regime, or it's a contradiction. Tomorrow we're gonna discuss about this point and to retake this totalitarian thing, and then we're gonna see what Hannah Arendt has to say on the moral origins of totalitarianism. Because what she did, she went to Jerusalem to see the process that were made against one of the most important Nazi leaders, Adolf Eichmann, which was captured by the Jewish in Argentina and was kept into Jerusalem to have a public. They wanted to make a public trial of the people of Israel against the Nazis who tried to exterminate them. So tomorrow we're going to discuss this, and we have a presentation on Hannah Arendt and totalitarianism, right? It's in Erika. No?
Yes.
Well, she died.
I think she left.
She left. Okay, she left. So yeah, tomorrow we're going to present this, and we're going to talk about the conference, democracy and power. If somebody wants to make